the amount of water was disproportionate to the creek, and it was almost incomprehensible. It was like, where did this water come from? So it totally threw us, totally threw everybody, our campers, people in cars, lost cars down waterways and into the ocean. So it was pretty hectic, to say the least.
Welcome to Dirty Linen. This is Dani Valent with you. Thank you for your ears, your brain cells. I really appreciate spending this time with you. I'm looking forward to spending time as well with today's guest. Martin Pirc has been in hospitality for decades. Punch Lane in Melbourne's Chinatown has been there for 31 years. Crazy. Doing wine bar before we even knew what wine bars were. Juliet, an adjoining cellar bar, has been around for 8 years, and over in Richmond, neighbourhood restaurant Waygood is 10. It's a pretty incredible track record. Hospitality businesses throw all kinds of questions and challenges at their owners. A question might be, why am I doing this? Life can fling those questions too. What is it all about? What's the meaning of it all? Yep. We are going big today. Martin, welcome to Dirty Linen.
Thanks, Dani. What some lovely words that you've said there. Really appreciate it.
Well, I really appreciate the lovely meals that I've had at your restaurants over the years, but I would actually say what I appreciate more is the warmth and the genuine spirit of hospitality that I think is threaded through your venues, presented with a trust in that diners are going to meet you more than halfway. So thanks for doing all that you've done.
Thank you.
Now, I know we find you at a pretty challenging point in your life. Tell us a little bit about what's been happening the past couple of weeks.
Yeah, so we've got a place down along the Great Ocean Road in the corridor, sort of between Cumberland Lawn and Wye River, a little sort of hamlet called Separation Creek. And making our way down this neck of the woods on the 15th, we arrived around at 1 o'clock when there was a major kind of flood event. So it was a bit, I think I said to you earlier on in the text, like a bit biblical in the sense of the amount of water was disproportionate to the creek, and it was almost incomprehensible. It was like, where did this water come from? So it totally threw us, totally threw everybody, our campers, people in cars, lost cars down waterways and into the ocean. So it was pretty hectic, to say the least.
It's pretty, I've seen the videos and we'll share some of those as well, because, biblical's a pretty good word for it. Just the shock of this black rushing wall of water coming past your cute cottage. What was the feeling like? Were you able to process what you were seeing?
I think, a lot of, like when we talked yesterday, like whether I like it or not, a lot of my life kind of relates back to restaurant kind of context. So it's just I think in restaurants you get used to dealing with a lot of unknowns all the time. So it almost feels like you become conditioned to just sort of be present and kind of try and keep your emotions in check. I'm sure they're not, but it's not like you're not human, but you have this kind of facade where you're thinking, what do I need to do? What's really happening? But I think it wasn't until I watched footage back that I actually understood the enormity of it, because it was too much to process at the time. And it's a bit hard sort of saying that because it seems a little bit, like it, not the right context to be saying something, but it really was quite overwhelming. The noise, like you could actually hear logs going down, like it was like massive amounts of timber just crunching, as well as water just gouging out the side of the bank. So, and then the volume kept on going up, and it just thought, is this actually going to stop, or is this going to just keep going? The bridge actually couldn't contain the amount of water. So it was like a faucet being on to full on, and the water's just gushing out quicker than the bridge could handle. So, it was like, it was a bit mind bending to say the least.
What was the impact to your property?
Basically, like we've been here 3 years and we planted a few thousand indigenous species, and it's basically wiped pretty much all of it out. So it just chewed out the chunk. We probably lost a few meters worth of bank, so our kind of land has diminished, and it's just chewed out like just rocks that you would never think that will be movable. Pete Jacobs behind us, his property, he's got these 2 steel girders that are actually bent, and they're like probably a metre in width and probably like 10 metres in length from his bridge, and they're actually bent. There's logs, there's trees in the ocean that, like, I can't even explain the size of them, and I thought they've all come down the creek. So we've lost our bridge that connects the 2 sides and our bungalow that sort of was drifting away as we arrived. So sort of drifted into a huge banksia and kind of got like flat packed with probably about 30 metres worth of debris sort of at the back end of it. That took kind of a crew 3 or 4 days to actually disassemble it and take it all away, with about 20, the biggest skips that you've ever seen in the world, like just hauling stuff out of. And now it's like, it's a bit more of a desert where it's just got a blank canvas again. So it was like just really, I don't know, it's like I said, it was overwhelming. And then you go into repair mode where you think, you know, what do I need to do to kind of make it okay in the immediate, so the immediate kind of thing. Like, again, like a restaurant where you've run out of entrees, but what have you got in the fridge that you can actually muster up that's going to cut the mustard? And you got to be thinking on your feet straight away.
I was really moved, distressed. I mean, it's all so shocking, but I think the thing that really gripped me was losing all those plants. And, you know, I've got a little nature strip out the front of my house. I've planted 6 little seedlings there, and I look at them every morning and every night and, you know, pull out the weeds around them and, yeah, give them a little bit of water, but not too much. And, you know, just the attention and the connection that you can have with something growing. I just can't imagine how hard that must be to process.
Yeah, it was. It became almost like an obsession, you know, because we'd had these plants grown from seed. So Mike from Otway Greening, and there's also the crew from Otway Indigenous. Mike grew seed that he collects in the different hamlets. So we were kind of growing seed from the area that we're in and planting that from little tube stock. So they're really tiny to start with, and like it's been a few years and they're actually getting some nice volume. Some had passed and some that just didn't work, and the earth was telling you what was going to work and what wasn't. But we're starting to really enjoy it. Mel and I were sitting here a few weeks ago just going, wow, you know, really, you know, we're really starting to enjoy the labour and the benefits of putting all that in place. And, you know, we had like little fairy wrens, black-tailed cockatoos, like just like swallows, like all this amazing kind of life coming in, and a lot of pollinators. And it was really felt like it was, I know, creating this lovely little ecosystem. And it also looked good too. It was like aesthetically pleasing. So, you know, it was like just nice to get up in the morning. We'd have kangaroos out the front eating the kangaroo grass with a big clump in their mouth. But the nice thing is they just regenerate and they come back a little bit stronger. So it was really getting to a point where we felt like we enjoy the next level. So for it to be nuked, it was like quite devastating. But I like to also kind of put a positive light on and go, well, we know what's worked and what hasn't, and we've had an exercise in claiming the land back. So now we've got a little bit more knowledge the second round. So that's a good thing.
Good on you for finding the glass half full in amongst all this, Martin. Yeah, I really appreciate that. I mean, you mentioned that your skills as a restaurateur have stood you in good stead dealing with this crisis. I'd love you to connect the experience with your work in restaurants. Like how can you sort of, how do you draw the connections?
I guess kind of resilience, you know, like just kind of being present. I guess a lot of success is kind of built around just about turning up, being present and turning up and moving forward, because it's probably, not that there's few industries, but it's one of those industries that is still hands-on, and it is still kind of run by humans, and it is emotional, it is logical, it is, bureaucratic. There's so many different hats that you sort of have on, and I think that you kind of lean into those skills. And I think you kind of said it correctly before, Dani, when you were talking about, coming into the restaurants and, like absolutely food and drink are paramount. But I think a lot of my sort of approach, the connection I have, is that it's the intention that you create a space with, the people that you employ that create those kind of memories and things like that. I think the garden was sort of an extension of the intention of what you're trying to do, that other people then actually can enjoy the labour of what you put out. And I think in that kind of giving you receive kind of mentality. So because we're actually literally on the Great Ocean Road, we like people pass us by all the time. Like they walk down through sort of the front end of the property, which is a public space. So, like seeing kids, walk the dog and the dog's in the creek and throwing pebbles in, or playing in the sort of sand at the end of the bridge, and those sort of things become kind of experiences. And I think the aesthetics in themselves could be a bit snobby and a bit, like kind of elite maybe. But I think when people design things or create spaces, whether they're public spaces, and then when you see people engage with them and interact with them, is really quite, it's probably the thing that brings the most joy in a way. And I think that's kind of my connection to restaurants. I think I've been in restaurants a long time. I don't know if I'm a purist or like I'm a food Nazi, or I don't think I'm any of those things, but I think that I'm kind of more like I like to think I'm like a people person and an observer of kind of the human condition, and you're trying to create the right environment for those potential interactions to happen. Not that they have to happen on a, every person has that kind of experience every single time, because that's unrealistic. But I think just creating those conditions, and maybe it's like plants too, you create the right conditions. Some plants thrive and other ones don't, and then you kind of work with what works. And you keep working along that, and you keep listening and keep working with that kind of connection.
Yeah, I love that idea, the restaurant and the garden as almost like a town square where people come in and create their own dynamics in that space, that you've sort of you're an enabler in that way. Yeah,
very much so. And I think that's, I think I've always sort of intentionally, my intention has been about the connection, like creating that environment, like with the staff that you're surrounded by, the people that you're working with, that then have the connection with the people that they engage with. And you're kind of like a conduit to all of those. So it's quite a privilege. And I guess it kind of goes back down to being on this sort of like little bit of public sort of private space. It becomes quite a privilege to be a sort of custodian of spaces in a way that create memories that kind of then, that's the human condition, because they're the things that are intangible that we remember. You don't have to pay for those necessarily. There's no tax on memories yet. So.
Can you think of some ways that you've enabled those connections and experiences in the businesses over the years?
I don't know. Like, I think I know there's probably so many stories, but, there was one time I really needed this chef to work in one of the restaurants, and he was finishing up and he was going overseas. He was going back to New Zealand. And he committed to this particular day that I was going to be short-staffed. And I thought, like he was not inconsistent, but, he might have been a bit wobbly. And the day before he said, look, I can't help you out because I haven't packed. I've got to mow the lawn, like to leave my house in the state to get my bond back and whatever. So I said, okay, I'm going to be at your place in the morning with a lawnmower. I'm going to mow your lawn. I'm going to take you washing. I'm going to drive you to work. I'm going to do your washing. I'm going to pack all this stuff up and make it happen. So I kind of didn't give him an option. And I got the result, and everyone around me thought I was nuts, kind of thought, well, why are you going over and above for this person, who's kind of like not as a bit flaky? And I went, I'm actually just thinking about the outcome, like I'm going, I can do all those things and I can make that happen. And therefore that will actually then create the situation that I want, which is like some stability and get through that day. So I don't know, I don't know. Those sort of things, I think, to me, are the kind of the bits, the juicy bits around all the other boring bits that you do. But you think, there's no rule book and no one's in charge of me, and I don't have to, sort of comply with any OH&S thing. I can just do it. So it's a bit wacky, but
I love it. I love it. I love it that I ask you for a key moment, and we're not talking about chives being chopped perfectly. We're talking about a lawn being cut right.
to make that I remember, back before we were before everything became more technology based, we'd take the kids to sport on a Saturday and they'd have the phone diverted. So take, bookings and then do floor plans. I'd probably do 6 floor plans by the time the end of the day, like through the course of all the things. And then I'd ring the restaurant and I'd have it on a bit of paper and then I'd sort of juggle it. So again, you're doing these things, for your own end game, which is to have, a restaurant that people go to and, that you can actually derive an income from. But you kind of think, oh, that's actually facilitating what I actually need to happen. So it's like small business. Like I've got to do whatever it takes. No one's going to guarantee me anything. I've actually got to be present and make it happen. So there's lots of that kind of thinking. And I think, when you relay that to what sort of happened here, it's the same sort of thing. Like you're on this parcel of land that's a bit precarious in the sense of it's got overlays. It's, Gore Kappa, catchment, parks, Hollard, Fulton Hollard, the Roads Authority, the council. Everyone's got a stake in something and you're kind of like, you could almost disappear. So you got to find a place within all these organisations and work out a way to connect with all of those people to actually get what you need. But you got to do it in a way where they feel positive about it and that you're not doing anything untoward. You're actually helping facilitate then help you, because that's what most people want to do. Like most people want to dine because I think all people want to dine because they want to have a good experience. They don't go there to be, no one's going there to be told bad news. So when you're working with that intention, you got to always go back to that and go, what have I got to do in the background that no one knows about to actually make that bit happen? So the two are sort of symbiotic in a way. Effort equals reward.
A bit of front of house charm could work with the local road authority, for example.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So far, so good. They think I'm a really upbeat, positive guy, which hopefully I am. But it surprised me how many people are like really almost taken back by it. I'm sort of surprised by the acknowledgement. I thought people would just go, oh yeah, but they're like really over the top going, wow, I really want to help you out. Like I really love your attitude. But I think that's sort of been case in point through kind of that. Maybe that's just my personality as well. Maybe it's got nothing to do with hospitality, but I think it's been honed in hospitality.
I think a lot of people in hospitality, whether they're owners or they're team members, and perhaps particularly front of house, they don't necessarily value the breadth of their skills and all the different ways that they can be applied. And I'd say perhaps even the person might value them, but perhaps society at large doesn't value them highly enough.
Well, they expect them, they kind of like expect, someone to have EQ and IQ and like innate knowledge about a product and whatever, but it doesn't seem like it's valued. Maybe it's like in all of those social kind of like, in social work and all those endeavours in the caring facilities where everyone expects that person to really good at what they do, but they don't kind of value them as much as what they expect of them in equal sort of terms as a generalisation. I think that's not always the case by any means, but as a very broad generalisation, whereas if someone's maybe successful in a more obvious way, there's kind of more reward for that. Whereas when people are being humble and just simply get on with their job, it's not revered as much. And maybe that's a societal thing, or it's a second queer job.
I think also because so much of the magic of hospitality is making things seem effortless. that sometimes the trick is done too well and it's not appreciated enough.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, it's that art piece where someone says, I could have done that. You go, well, you didn't.
Martin, tell me about the day last week or whenever it was a while ago when you came into the city to see some music. Tell me about how that was.
Oh, yeah. So, it was like the most, I don't know, like it was one of those ones I think I'll remember for a long time. That the day started with like a 20-ton excavator and a 10-ton excavator arriving kind of on the grassy lawn in front of the demolished site, and I smooth talked a guy from Rhodes to kind of organise these excavators, and he basically said, these guys are here to help you. I really like you. I really want to do the right thing by you and make it easy. So it was a really hot day, and I was just pulling plants out of the ground because these tire tracks were going to run over these mounds that things were still in, and running from pillar to post just against time. We had to get back to a David Byrne concert on the 22nd that we'd planned sort of 6 months ago. So it was just ironic that these two things, it's like that these two things intersected on the same day. And we were meant to leave here like at 1 o'clock, then it was 2 o'clock, then it ended up becoming 4 or 4:30, and we got back to the city about 7. But Mel and I were just like totally, we had nothing in the tank. So we're just driving, just looking straight. Like you just felt like you had like almost nothing to say, or you didn't even know where you were. Got home, quickly showered, jumped on little Vespa, and then rode over to Botanical Gardens to the My Music Bowl, and then there was a 2-kilometre queue to get in, and then we kind of squeezed a bit on the grassy lawn in the middle, sort of found a little spot in between people that had got there earlier, and then this kind of whole evening unfolded with David Byrne kind of like exuding kind of like this quiet positivity, not shouting, not preachy, and kind of the lyrics and the sentiment really kind of like sort of just carried us, sort of elevated us into this other kind of place. And you just realize how simple life is sometimes, where you just got to be present and just be open, which is quite amazing.
I mean, tell me some more about the message, because, I mean, David Byrne, well known to a lot of people from like the 80s, Talking Heads, really famous rock band, a bit of an art rock band. But I think, in the decades since, he's worked with musicians from all different cultures and, celebrated. I don't know. What would you say he's celebrating? Like, tell us more about it.
Yeah, like he like there was one bit where he spoke through the concert, and what was really powerful about it is that he was really inclusive about it. I think in days gone by, and he sort of acknowledged that he was more egocentric, and it was kind of, I think the whole disbandment of Talking Heads was kind of because, the band was on one side and he was on the other, and he was so obsessed with what he was doing that he wasn't really inclusive. Whereas I think with kind of maturity, the opposite, where he's actually celebrating all the musicians on the stage in a really heartfelt, humble kind of way. But the thing that really caught me is that he quoted somebody, and I can't remember their name, but he was quoting somebody that really stuck with him. And then I kind of felt like it was like a conga chain of quotes, like where I kind of got stuck with him quoting somebody else, which was, that love and kindness is the most punk thing I can do right now. So basically, it was really kind of in the world, the fact that we're all kind of going into the probably masculine energy where you're actually trying to smash everything and come up with solution-based, is kind of going into probably more the feminine energy where you're kind of grounded and you are more connected to, the more gentle things and the soft things that are actually create more resistance than they do shouting. So, and it all comes back down to caring for one another. And again, like the message for me was in this kind of resolve of going through, like a tragedy in the sense of, something that you've loved, a property, or, you're going through that kind of trauma. Like at the end of the day, the most important thing is sort of just being present and working with it. And again, it kind of felt like he was sort of talking to the kind of the wider part of, I don't know, I guess that kind of in the hospitality industry where you're in the service industry, and it is about kind of humility in a way, and how powerful probably that's been in kind of my journey, and just being kind of present with people, creating that space for people to be, is way more powerful, because when they come back into the restaurant, or their kids come back to the restaurant, or there's associations with memories and really important events, you just realize that you're part of this kind of bigger cosmos, and you're just like a small part of it. And maybe you can't change the world, but maybe you can just change the world that you actually live in. And maybe that's enough, for humanity. If everyone just did that, then that would be enough. So yeah, it just really captured I guess it was like a lovely message on a night or a day where I just felt totally shattered. And it was actually kind of fun. And it was just like, it was like a really, where you just kind of can't help but just be a bit boppy and a bit, and everybody, and as you could feel it in the air, everyone just had that kind of vibe, and it just captured that experience. And I think in an interview, he talked about, at the end of the day, it's music, you know what I mean? Like, they're performing music. It's not like religion, or, you're trying to convert the world, but sometimes the soft way about going about something is so powerful, I think. And it just reminded me at this age and stage of my life that, they're really important things to acknowledge and celebrate.
So powerful. I think this idea of love and kindness as an act of resistance it's just so, it really struck me as well. I just think it's great. Like, what do we need more than love and kindness? But then you also think, like, what is hospitality but love and kindness?
I know. At the end of the day, that's its core intention, because that's what people are really, there aren't, obviously religion is very powerful in the world, but like, I find probably in the ecosystem we live in that, restaurants have been the meeting places where people are congregating, they're connecting, all the things that you do in those official kind of places. And I think COVID saw that when that was taken away, how much of a loss there was in people's lives in not being able to connect. And then you realize even more so that you're the kind of, all the places are facilitators. Some of it's just functional. Sometimes you just need to go somewhere and eat something and it just is yummy. And that's absolutely fine as well. It doesn't always have to be mind-bendingly, whatever. But I think having that potential underlying there and those moments, they don't have to be all the time. They could be often, but they don't have to be. But I think it's just being open to when that possibility unfolds itself, as opposed to, it's a necessity. It's the intention that you do it with. And I think with, like a new cohort of people that are probably more technology based, and there's probably less personal interaction, and there's less understanding of those nuances of like actually talking to people and seeing their facial expressions and reading their body language. You can see the change in that. And I'm not too sure what will ever, how that will end up, what that will morph into. But I think, again, it's really important to be mindful of how the simple things are really important in our engagement with people, and being present. I think it's a thing most people crave, to be noticed, like we all want to be seen, I think. And I think that's when those complaints come in, that the waiter didn't see me and he didn't acknowledge me and he didn't, they didn't know I was there and they didn't engage me the way that I felt comfortable. And I think, that need of humans to be seen and to be engaged with is probably more powerful than ever, because we've probably got less of it going on because we're all engaged with ourselves in a way with technology.
Yeah, that's such a generous insight, because if I think about some of the 1-star reviews that I've read where people are like, I was waiting, they didn't see me, all that stuff. It's like, actually, if you see that more as a poignant cry from a human, then maybe people can take those on in a different way. I'm still not saying I endorse that, but
no. I think that there's so many intersections because it is a human and human kind of transaction for the most part. I think it's innate in us. It's kind of like, and because it's a fashionable it's fashion, it's it's status. It's like, do I go to this place, and therefore I've curated the list of the places that I've gone to, so therefore that gives me status because I've gone to all the right places. Am I wearing the right things? Am I listening to the right music? It can be that kind of thing. It can be community spaces where people go there, and we've got some friends, South African friends, that have opened a place in Nord's Wharf, and they're not hospitality based. Like Billy designed river rafts, and Wendy's like, a great entrepreneur, but they've opened up a cafe, and I've gone up and spoke to them a few times about what I think, might help. And, but they've created community up there. So they're like the only place kind of in the village, and they've got community nights where Wendy will play the piano, all these musicians of all the area are coming out, connecting with one another. It's amazing when, the right environment, people create that community, how powerful that is. And probably because they are South African and they got a different story than some people, and they're very open, and they're really community spirited, you just realize how powerful that becomes. And it's like sort of like take my hat off to them, because they've sort of started later on in life and they've like put in 110%. And it's not like on a glossy magazine or, it's not like that kind of thing, but it's so powerful in the community. And their intention and their spirit about creating community so at the core. But, that's not everyone's gig either, and it doesn't have to be. It's just one of the possibilities out of all the things. Sometimes, you might have a little stoop underneath a subway, and it might be just a cool place that you go past every day and engage with, or it could be many, many things. It could be, a local seat at a pub that you go to and you just love hanging out there, or a coffee shop, or someone you connect with, over the counter. There's all these opportunities, I think. And that's the nice thing about it. It's like, again, going back to the garden, it's kind of opportunity. It's like you sow a seed and what's going to come from it. You don't know there's an opportunity there. Like it might go really well, it might go better than expected or worse than expected, but there's always an opportunity to sort of redress that. And I think that's very symbolic in the hospitality world.
I'm actually in awe of your spirit around this, which I think, I'm sure there's a lot of emotions at different times, but what do you think you're going to take back from this experience at Separation Creek back to Melbourne and the businesses? Do you feel like you've brought all your learning to this experience, or are you going to take some learning back as well?
Yeah, it's definitely a back and forth, because it's definitely a drive there and a drive back. So it's a lot of time to think both ways, which is really nice. I think being really appreciative of kind of what you've got, because I think sometimes we're always looking for more, but sometimes like maybe we've got enough. I think restaurants really can take it out of you, especially over, for me, maybe 43 or 44 years since I started in hospitality. So it's definitely a long journey, but I like to think that I could sort of maybe take like all the hard things that have happened and, you maybe create a foundation of hopefully a little bit of wisdom and a little bit of good intention to keep kind of growing with. And I haven't done this, I don't think, properly, but like really try and connect even more with, the staff that are around you and hear their stories. And I'm kind of blessed to be with a partner, Mel, who sort of comes from like a social work kind of background, very about equality and richness. And like she's been helping me out at the restaurant a little bit over the last year. And it's been really insightful because she'll notice that people, where people are coming from and what's really going on, I really appreciate that because it's kind of what I want to know. But sometimes you get so caught up in all the functional stuff. I mean, it's always going in the background, but it's really nice for someone to draw your attention to what's really going on or what's needed or a better way of going about connecting with people. So it feels like it's the whole thing is a continuum. You're never going to learn enough. It's always going to be more. But I felt like we've created really, really good culture generally in the restaurant, in the different spaces with all the different cohorts of people. And really important, really substantial connections. We had 3 Italians living with us in COVID, and they've since got married, sort of in the Turin sort of area. And Marco emailed me last year and said, asked me, I think he proposed New Year's Eve. He hasn't got married yet, but he asked me to be his best man, which was quite flattering. I was like, I was a bit taken aback. And then also they've since had a baby, which is amazing. And then another Chilean couple lived with us also, and they went back to Chile and got married. And so it feels like there's all this family that we've created sort of locally and sort of internationally. And Marco even texted me, I think, he WhatsApped me last night saying, I've got 2 Italians coming back, they're fantastic. If you've got work for them. I'm going, oh, this is great. So, because we're actually looking for staff. So it's kind of like, the right kind of staff in different places. And it was like, just him knowing me, I know that he knows what I'm about. So, again, it's this loop, isn't it, with people, this connection with people, which is amazing.
But Martin, just picking up on the fact that you had these people living with you, is that because they were here on visas and weren't able to get a government payment, so they were pretty much on their asses and you took them in?
Yeah, yeah. They became our family. So
that's really beautiful.
It's a pretty special time, actually. Almost wish I could go back and relive it, in slow motion.
There's some things I'd take and there's some things I'll happily leave to history.
Oh, no, I mean that part. No, I'll discard all the bad, but just that actual part of it, those relationships, those that time together. Not the context. The context wasn't good, but the actual relationships were great.
Yeah, I love it. Martin, maybe, you mentioned that you've hopefully gathered some wisdom over the years. Maybe could you leave us with a little bit of advice for younger restaurateurs or hospitality workers who may be one day dreaming of having their own restaurant? Do you have any key words for them?
Yeah, I guess, if they look at themselves in the mirror and say, why am I really doing this? Am I doing it because potentially, is it a Sunday rate that I'm after, or is it am I chasing that? And that's okay, because that's just the world we live in. That's fine. But if I'm really doing this because there's something in me that's sort of sizzling and bubbling, and I really want to be, there's something that I'm connecting with, and I want to do it well, just be humble about it and just take it step by step. Don't rush it, because you're rushing to nowhere. Step there in a more considered way. Take your time a little bit, and actually learn things properly, or try and intentionally go after jobs or things where you can learn and move around and curate your own, what your strengths are, and work on those, because there can be different things for different people. And I think that, I've just had a daughter who's come back from living in London, and she studied interior design, and she's now working at Point Leo Estate. And then her partner, who's a chef, funnily enough, he's working at Tedesca. So, I know both of them, when they were just taking their time and learning things, and they were just being there was a humility about what they're doing, but they just had to apply that. And I know they sort of shine because it's from within. It's not like a facade on the outside. And I think if a generation can really kind of think about that differently, I know it's probably hard because everything feels like instant gratification, that you got to kind of get a reward straight away. But I think maybe it's not possible. Maybe it's a bit hard at times, and that's okay as well. You don't have to always get it right. I think that's the other thing I've learned, is getting things wrong doesn't make you wrong. It just means that just part of the process of getting it right. And I think just slow down a little bit, or just look at what you're doing and why you're doing it and what the intention is. And then work on your strengths and hone in onto those, and be open to other things that you might be really good at that you didn't know because you took some time to think about it, or for someone to observe you or to tell you what they think your strengths are in a way that you never understood before, and then take that on board.
There is so much in there that's going to mean a lot to a lot of people, Martin, as I think this whole chat will. Thank you so much for spending this time with us in amongst the Corangamite Authority and, all the other things that you've got to do. So wonderful to talk with you. I cannot wait to, sip from a glass at Punch Lane in the near future. Thank you very much. It's been, one of my favourite chats on the whole podcast.
One of your favourite chats this year.
Even more than that. Thanks, Martin. This is Dirty Linen, and I'm Dani Valent. We air the issues that the hospitality industry finds hard to talk about, hearing from different people with unique perspectives. We want to hear from you as well. If you have something that needs to be said about a topic, get in touch so we can include your perspective. Contact us at dirtylinenat deepintheweeds.com.au or hit us up on Insta at Dirty Linen Podcast. We can't wait to hear from you.